Good morning, Peralta, and welcome. My name is Mark Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of Marketing, Communication, and Public Relations at the Peralta Community College District. Welcome to our accreditation update. Before I introduce Chancellor Jackson to get us started, a little bit of housekeeping. Today's session is a Zoom webinar. You should have access to a Q&A feature as well as chat. As the presentation is going today, please submit any questions that you have using the Q&A feature or by chat. We'll be monitoring both Q&A and chat and want to make sure that your questions get answered. The session will last about 90 minutes. We've got a short presentation and then plenty of time to make sure that we can have a discussion around any questions that you might have. And with that, I will say, welcome, Peralta. It is my pleasure to introduce our Interim Chancellor, Dr. Jannett N. Jackson. Dr. Jackson, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to make sure I'm not muted. Okay, great. I see the little line going up and down, and so away we go. First of all, I want to thank those of you that are here. I really do appreciate this. I know we did this with the short notice, but I'm going to give you a little bit of background so you can understand how we got to this point. So, Mark, thank you for the guidance. And I want to just say, because this is being recorded, please ask questions because those individuals that are not here won't be able to ask those questions. So we want to make sure that we have time at the end. As you know, or some of you may or may not know, that I'm the interim chancellor. I started here on April the 16th of this year. And since then, I literally hit the ground running. But since many of you were already running, all I did was join the race. So our district is facing several priority items addressing the recommendations of the Accrediting Commission for Community and Junior Colleges, or as we normally refer to it as ACCJC, is one of those priorities. So on June the 10th, the presidents and I, along with Interim Vice Chancellor of Finance, Adil Ahmed, made a presentation to ACCJC regarding a report we submitted in March. And on June 28th, we received a letter identifying the results of their deliberations, which was to continue all 4 institutions on probation. And they required us to complete a follow-up report addressing 10 recommendations and to submit a follow-up report to the commission no later than October the 1st of this year. From June the 27th, for those of you that are math whizzes, to October the 1st is 98 days. That's including weekends and holidays. If you start subtracting out the weekends and holidays, like the 4th of July, Labor Day, it means we had about 70 working days to complete this report. But then you start looking at, when can we take it to the board? Well, the board has its last meeting on September the 27th. Which is the last date before we have to turn it in to ACCJC. So you subtract out some more days from that. So anyway, you get my meaning. We had to do this. We had to do this in an efficient manner. And we knew that we really didn't have the capability of doing it by ourselves, given that we're also operationally running the district at the same time. So the ALOs and the Chancellor's Cabinet got together, and the Chancellor's Cabinet includes the 4 presidents, the Vice Chancellors, the Executive Director of Marketing, Communications, and Public Relations, the District CTO, and the Chief of Staff. And we created a calendar so that we could go and backward plan to see what were the deadlines and what were the gates that we had to meet in order to address all of these 10 recommendations. So I shared some of that with you at Flex Day on August the 20th, and that presentation is out on the web if you want to go back and review it. So I'm not going to go through the calendar and talk about that, but what I want you to do is take a look around and see who's on the panel. Those individuals represent the critical leadership at both the colleges and at the district. But they are only the tip of the iceberg. A lot of you that are sitting out there and viewing this, or maybe viewing this at a later date, were also part of this presentation, and also were part of getting us to the point that we are right now. We haven't reached the finish line yet. Like I said, we have until September the 27th to get it to the board, but we wanted you to know where we are. Let's take a snapshot of where we are right now, and to let you know we're not doing this in a vacuum. We're not doing it behind closed doors. We want you to know where we are. We want and we encourage your feedback. Don't wait until the 24th when the board agenda is posted and we have a meeting coming up to say, oh, by the way, you guys forgot to put in X, Y, Z. It's a little too late at that point. So that's why we're starting out today. So these individuals have taken the lead, although they by no means represent the totality of the individuals that were involved in getting us to this point and moving us forward so that we can finish and get this report to ACCJC by October 1st. So today I'd like to just give you a brief introductory about a person who is helping us, who has been really a guide on the side, who has a little carrot and a little stick that she uses to get us moving forward. But really, we would not be where we are right now if it wasn't for her. And that is Dr. Janet Falk. She will be presenting with President Angelica Garcia. And all of you know Dr. Garcia, she's been with us over a year. So I'm not going to go into a lot of background about her, but I do want you to understand why I selected and recommended basically to the council, the cabinet, excuse me, not the council, Dr. Fulks. So let me just give you a little bit of her, as they say, her bona fides, and then we will get into the presentation. Janet has 25 years of experience in a multi-college district. She's a faculty member and she has occasionally worked in administrative positions. She's from Kern Community College District, which is in the Central Valley. And I've known her for probably maybe not all of those 25 years, but I would say at least for the last 15. She's worked with the Academic Senate for California Community Colleges, ACCJC, and she's also worked with the statewide CEO board and on many projects focusing on students. She's been a peer review team member on more than 15 visiting teams. She's worked with colleges to understand and meet accreditation standards. And she's been an active participant in training peer review teams for the last 3 years. The specific skills that really make Janet the perfect candidate is that she includes the ability, she has the ability to translate recommendations into the required evidence needed to meet the requirements. She provides technical responses and aligns it with the writing so that it comes out as one document. And it is not only the college's evidence, but it also the district evidence. And I might mention that the 10 recommendations are focusing at the district, specifically at the district office, and some of the actions that were observed or recommendations that the board, the commission, the peer review team is providing to our board of trustees. The other thing about Janet is that she has visited Peralta on multiple times and in prior visits. So she knows who we are. And although she was retired, happily retired, she agreed to work with us for, she believes that Peralta is key in serving a very important population in California. So with that, I am going to turn it over to President Garcia and Dr. Janet Falk so that they can walk you through how we got to where we are in the process, and then we will take your questions. I might want to mention if you have questions as we go through, because we wanted this to be a fireside chat, not just us standing on stage and spouting out, data and where we are. We really want you to ask some questions. So we may stop I've advised Mark, if we get some pertinent questions that we really aren't going to address later on, to stop us. We'll try to address that question at that time. The members of the panel are here, so if it's something specific to their area of expertise, then we may ask them to address that. So with that, I'd like to get started and thank all of you for attending.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Good morning, buenos dias, colegas, Peralta family. As Dr. Jackson shared, my name is Angelica Garcia, and I proudly serve as the president of Berkeley City College. In a moment here, our colleagues who really run the show and are the bosses are going to get this screen presentation set up for us. And while that presentation is coming up, just want to reiterate again that if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. We are all readily available and want to make sure that we answer. Let's see, I'm still waiting for, there we go. So good morning. I'd like to begin by just sharing that it's my honor to be but a representative of the collective group that has been working over the past summer months. I want to take this time to acknowledge the leadership of Dr. Jackson, the team of Vice Chancellor colleagues at the district, and on behalf of the college presidents, acknowledge the work that has been done from our executive cabinet levels to make sure that we are prepared and respond to the accreditation body. Our next slide here is going to provide an overview. If you don't mind advancing the slide, please. Thank you. Is providing an overview of what we are addressing in this report that it's due on October 1st. So first and foremost, we need to celebrate that all 4 colleges had incredibly successful spring visits. The team reports that we received highlighted much of the good work that we know we have done, and provided 2 of our colleges, Laney College and Berkeley City College, with one recommendation for improvement at Laney College and 2 at Berkeley City College. Now, we all know that the district is not an accredited body, and therefore all of the colleges share the district requirements. And so this presentation is going to provide you an update, a status update of the work to date. So we have 10 district requirements that we must address in this report. 8 of those are fiscal related, connected to FCMAT and other external auditing bodies. And then we have 2 improvement recommendations. So what you will not see in this October 1 report is the colleges, specifically Laney College and Berkeley City College, addressing the recommendations for improvement, as those will be addressed at the midterm report. Our next slide here now provides a broad overview. So much work has been done over the past month, and Dr. Jackson was not speaking lightly when she said that Dr. Fulks has been working with us to really prepare the work. And at this point in time, I want to acknowledge our accreditation liaison officers, because this is where their roles, the work that they do to lead our respective colleges, has been critical. And so what we now have in the summary is that the district is analyzing and stabilizing the finances, just overall fiscal operations, as well as financial aid. There were a number of auditing findings that we're having to address, and much work has been done. The second item is the ongoing work of defining and delineating functions. Now, here is where we know the operational fluidity, both fluidity and finality of where college roles begin and end and district roles begin and end. And so you're going to see a little bit later on the work that's underway to assist all of our collective effort around delineation of functions. Also in the report is work at the district and board of trustee level. So we've certainly heard in previous reports and communications how Dr. Jackson continues to describe the delineation and authority of the chancellor. Our board of trustees have certainly engaged in a very public facing, outward facing sharing of how they choose to interact with one another, and they begin every board meeting with those statements. So this idea of one decision, one voice, that as a trustee, they act as an independent body that's free of influences, and an ongoing review of policies and procedures and following them. And so you will also hear later in this report the work that's been done to review that, and work that especially Dr. Siri Brown and Joseph Belinsky have supporting us in these efforts. And then lastly, assuring the academic quality and just financial stability at each of the colleges, thereby also extending to our district colleagues. So at this time, I would like to transition the official presentation to Dr. Janet Falk, because she's really going to begin with setting the context. How do the college operations informed the district operations inform board oversight? And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Fulks.
Hi, good morning, Peralta. Thank you for letting me be here with you. And Maya, if we can go to the next slide. I have been to Peralta District several times for various meetings and on one accreditation visit. And so I want you to see, for me, I needed to put this into a visual about what was actually happening, because I know as a faculty member, sometimes we used to complain that there were summer surprises. And this is not a summer surprise. This is a report that was basically directed at the district and the Board of Trustees. And so if we look at this slide, you can see that of the 10 requirements, and notice I'm using the word requirement, it's not an improvement recommendation, it is a requirement. Of the 10 requirements, 5 of them are things you can't do anything about, really. The board must do that. But then as the board does it, the district must follow through. And so you can see 3 of those requirements, 1, 2, and 3, are activities that the district has to do. In general, all of the colleges and the district need to do the last 2 requirements that I have here. Number 10 is clearly delineate and document and communicate responsibilities. And number 8 is regularly assess your policies and follow them. And I just want to tell you what a privilege it's been to be responsible to find the evidence of your work on all of these things. Right up front, I'm going to say the work is not done, but you have all done tremendous work. And sometimes your story isn't clear. And I feel that your colleges, where you are working with our student population there, is one of the most important things that America has to see works right. And that's why I agreed to do this. And it's why I honor the work that every one of you are doing at every place on the campus, in the district office. You have a very honorable mission that you're needing to follow. And I think that you're making great progress getting there. So let's go to the next slide and get into some of the details. And I'm going to ask you to forgive me if, because I am from the outside, if I say anything that ruffles any feathers. Please help me. I love to get feedback on the way that I communicate about anything and everything. But as an outsider, sometimes I do see things a little bit differently. And where I wasn't quite sure in my view, I actually went and looked at other multi-college districts to kind of temper what I was seeing and saying. So the very first requirement has to do with finance. And it is no news to you that you have had so many reports, FICMAT, California Brain Trust, Cambridge West, ACCJC, your integrated planning document, your 5-year planning document. You have reports everywhere. And all of us know the last thing we need is another dusty report sitting on a shelf somewhere. But my finding was that even with unbelievable staff turnover in your district and at your colleges, you have somehow managed to take the recommendations from FICMAT and Cambridge West and CBT and integrate them into the work that you're doing. And I know that you've used many consultants. Consultants are great. They give an outside view. They're especially great when you don't necessarily have people in the positions to continue on with the work, but they aren't doing the work. It's up to you. It's up to you finding out any wisdom and guidance they can give you, but then incorporating that into the work that you're doing. And what I've seen is that you're not just in a race, you're on a rocket ship trying to implement a lot of this information that you've gotten from the reports and the consultants. You've had extensive analysis. You're in the middle of a PeopleSoft update, which is really going to serve you, but I'm pretty sure it's a pain in the butt right now, getting that software update up and going. I know you're recoding different things in your actual software areas and you're testing them, you're evaluating them. And what I want you to know is that while some of you are still frustrated, and boy, do I understand frustration when you're face to face with a student and something isn't working, but you are improving. You have made a lot of headway on this. It took years for the problems to occur in your software programs, from people putting little band-aids in different areas or going around a specific IT function to make something work for people, such that when your new PeopleSoft update came, those little bridges and band-aids didn't work anymore. So you are going to see some things broken that didn't seem like they were broken before, but what we need to do is make everything work on this huge and good platform that PeopleSoft Update 9.2 represents for you, because it's got checks and balances that simply weren't happening with the way that your infrastructure was set up before. There are financial controls that have been implemented, and those financial controls is a big word that you will find in all of the audit reports, in FICMAT, in ACCJC. And basically that means you need technical infrastructure, IT controls that let a process occur and then it gets checked, as well as human controls that will double check that the data that went in was right and that the report that came out is right. And then you've got committees that are going to check those reports. And you've got other committees that are going to check the reports done by the reporters to be sure that in the end, you are controlling everything that you do in the world of finance. So I just want to say, as I finish the update on status of requirement 1 on finance, your picture is so much more stable. Take it from a faculty member that went out and looked at every one of your CFS 311s for the last 5 years that were posted in the Chancellor's Office webpage. A CFS 311 is basically your IRS or tax report on what your funds were. And when you look at those over the 5 years and you see some of the red numbers that mean that you were out of compliance, the account was not balanced, and you see those disappearing and turning into the last year and this year's budget, you are so much more stable. But at the same time, as the BPAP task force, with which Joseph Belinsky, one of your trustees, the chancellor, and Siri and Sasha contributed to, as we found out, you don't have a legally required BP that talks about how you develop the budget. And so there are little missing components that need to happen as you move forward. So it's improved a lot. You still need work. COVID hasn't helped in some areas, but you know it helped in some other areas. And you still need adequate staffing, or you're not going to be able to implement all the great things in finance. So I'm just going to take a breath here for a second and let people type in questions, and be sure that none of the panel has anything that they want to offer up for the other panelists to answer. Royal?
I was going to mention, and I don't know, Mark, if you want to do it or not. There is one question so far. It may be answered later on in the presentation, but it is from Benjamin Nelson. What about hiring more full-time instructors? There's a talent drain going on in my program. This combined with the loss of institutional knowledge makes the gears start to grind a bit and means we ask more of our chairs and deans. Having consistency in class leads to administrators having more time to focus on institutional change. So I don't know if that's for now or for a little bit later, but I wanted to let you know what that question was.
So I will try to address it partly, although, you know, I don't think we can have a full discussion about that, because just as you're speaking about your particular department, I'm sure there's other departments that will say, yeah, me too, we do too. So in general, this fall semester, we are beginning our educational master plans. As part of that educational master plan process, that is one of the things that we look at. And we also are continuing the district strategic master planning process. And we also need to do a facilities master plan. So all of our major planning documents are strategic documents that we look at that influence our hires, that influence what programs we offer, that influence where we are going as a district based upon the goals identified, the values that we have, our mission will be reviewed. And out of that is where we determine what areas need additional staffing, what areas need equipment, what areas need facilities, what areas need anything else that fall outside of those perimeters. So it's not an answer, but we do have a process in place to address that. And we're getting ready to start that this fall.
Thank you, Chancellor Jackson.
Looks like there's one other question in the chat. I don't see it. I see it referenced. It's specifically asking what type of staffing is needed in finance? Well, in finance, district, and college. So I think the chancellor just kind of spoke to that there's an analysis being done to kind of take a deeper dive to answer that question. But I feel like you answered that, but if there's anything else, let me know.
I think that was addressed. I will tell you that one of the things that we're doing right now, I've said it before, but I'll repeat it. I think it bears repeating sometimes, is that we are looking at a classification study in the area of human resources. We're looking at that across the district for administrative as well as classified professionals. That should be completed sometime this fall. Again, that document and those recommendations will be woven into our integrated plan, our strategic master plan for the district and the educational master plans for the colleges. There may be some things that we can address immediately that come out of that report, but I can only anticipate that.
Thank you. And I just want to wrap this up by saying that there is so much work that needs to be done. COVID has upended all of our institutions. It's decreased our student numbers, which are basically how we get funded on a lot of things. And so this is going to be where you all need to do the work that is important to your institution and the health of your institution. I can say that we have a map delineating functions across your district. And there are areas where those functions are so long and the people in that area are so few that you need to look at that and ask yourselves, does this indicate that we don't have enough staffing in a particular area. But that's for you all to talk about, and it's more than something you would answer, I think, on just a quick webinar. It's something that you all need to figure out as an institution, meaning as a district as well. And at this point, I just wanted to stop, and I asked this question in some of the committees that I've been working with. Do you all know how many requirements it takes for a school to go from being on probation to show cause, which is really not a place you want to be? It's kind of a downward spiral. If you think about it, you've got 10 requirements, and it only takes one requirement that is not met anytime, not just when you're accredited, but anytime that the institution is in existence, that pulls that institution into a situation where they need to prove why they should exist. So working on every one of these, getting outside, like as a faculty member, getting outside of my faculty viewpoint, as a business person, outside of my my business and budget documents, getting outside of that and looking at every one of these requirements is really key to being able to make this report work, and to hopefully getting off of probation and back into warning and affirming your accreditation. So unless somebody else wants to comment, I'd like to go to the next requirement. And I'm not doing all the requirements. I wanted to highlight the ones that I felt the community in Peralta would be most interested in. So this next requirement is on audit findings. And as a faculty member, I felt like I wanted to define a few things. I'm a scientist, I'm a microbiologist, so I look at the little things. And as I was putting the report together, I felt like I wanted to explain to you these terms that our business colleagues use that don't necessarily sound like what they are, at least to me as a scientist. So at the bottom of the pyramid is the definition of a deficiency. And that's a design or operational control that should be in place to ensure that you're complying with all the regulations, state regulations, federal regulations, even your board policies, so that employees don't make mistakes, either intentionally or unintentionally, and end up out of compliance. So if you look at the bottom of the pyramid, you had one finding, 2020-003, was a deficiency. The next level of findings are called significant deficiencies. And this is where you might have a really large deficiency or multiple small deficiencies where you're pretty sure they're going to result in being out of compliance if you don't do something very quickly. It can't just sit there and be unattended to. They might have even been giving you a little bit of credit when you were already out of compliance. And then at the very top, and you can see that there were the 2020 findings, the one that just came in at the end of your spring semester, you had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, which were findings that are in the significant deficiency category. In the very top of the pyramid, you had 3 deficiencies that are considered material weaknesses. And that means basically you're not in compliance. And that is important when you're talking about a federal regulation where student financial aid is coming in. If you're out of compliance, the students don't get the financial aid. So these are really important material weaknesses that need to be dealt with. And so I want to just say at this top level here that you can't turn around and blame any individual from what I've seen in looking at all of these documents. There are so many things that were going on, so many patches in your IT, so many missing staffing positions, so many policies, procedures, and SOPs where you didn't have that cyclical check to be sure that somebody didn't just make, a random error in something. So this is not a blame game. This is actually where you turn around to the students in your classroom or the people that are in your area working, and you say, you know what, this is going to take all of us. Let's get our thoughts together and figure out how we're going to fix this. And I want to just turn it over to Chancellor Jackson with a question that she asked. Why should you care?
Did you want me to answer that, Janet? Why should you care?
Yes, please.
I'll tell you a little story because I always like to create a mental model. When I was going through graduate school, we got the opportunity to work with the legislature. I was going to University of Texas at Austin, and Austin is the capital, and so they were there, and we had an individual who came up with a term, and it was called WIFM. And the answer to that question is with another question, WIFM, what's in it for me? So why should you care? If we are not accredited, then we lose our accreditation. If we lose our accreditation, just like what happened across the bay, we will lose our students. If we lose our students, we get paid or reimbursed based upon the number of students that are attending. We will lose our funding. If we lose our funding, we will lay people off. If we continue down that spiral, whether you are tenured faculty or not, if we are not offering classes, we will have to close the institution. So it is a domino effect. It's not the problem of the board alone. It is not the problem of the district alone. It is not the district offices alone. It's not the problems of the colleges alone. It's all of us collectively. Ubuntu. If you remember my message, I am because we are. We are all interconnected. So yes, it is important for all of us. It is not a blame game. It's okay, we recognize it. So what are we going to do to solve the problem? I don't really care about pointing fingers at, prior administrations or this person did that. What are we going to do now to address it? And I think that we have started on that path. So that is the answer. Why should it matter? I don't know, maybe it doesn't to you, but it does to me, because if we are not here, who is going to serve our students? And they deserve the best, not just so. They deserve the best because they are some of the neediest. That's my answer.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. I think it's very important that you also understand that you've done some really successful things in your district, especially with bonds and covering some of the liabilities that you have gathered in the past. And these audit findings, the accreditation findings, FCMAT, they cycle back around to your bonds and to the percentage that you get from your bond funding. So we all need to fix this, because in the end, it not only cycles back around to how you're doing the job, but how you're being efficient in getting the money and using the money that sustains your district. So I want you to know that you have actively analyzed and fixed a lot of things. I went through months of daily documents where Eagle Rock, one of your consultants, Edge Rock, one of your consultants, has gone through and troubleshot some of those Band-Aids that were in the business IT area, the business processes. And they are working through those in both financial aid and in business finances. And they are frustrating, but they're getting better. And the improvements are going to start showing. Your PeopleSoft upgrade implemented some fantastic controls, which are great, so that on top of humans doing the work, the IT program, the software, the platform is moving things through these processes in a way that it's efficient and double checked. And in the end, you're going to have another group, Huron, whose expertise is in checking to see that you've actually used all of the PeopleSoft upgrade and that you're not depending on some of the Band-Aids and that you've replaced those Band-Aids. Because in the past, several of the people that wrote reports about Peralta said that you never actually used all of the PeopleSoft capabilities, and that's where some of these errors were. So technology is present and working hard. Go to that website for your district. You can't believe all the things that they've completed and accomplished. Business processes are actively addressing the gaps. And this links into the last requirement, which we'll talk about towards the end here. Delineating the functions and therefore the accountability of what gets done by colleges or by district, and where does the buck stop when you have something that needs to be completed. That is really going to help with the audit findings. So the bottom line is you have, as a district, you've responded to all of the audit findings. You've told them you understand the problem and that you're working on the answer. They're not all fixed, although several of them are completely fixed and cleared. So you are in better shape than you were a month ago even. If you could go to the next slide.
Dr. Fulks, thank you. I want to just give Mark Johnson an opportunity to remind us as a participants how we can engage in Q&A. Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, President Garcia. Just as a reminder, please submit your questions using the Q&A feature. That gives us an opportunity to either respond in person and tag the question as being responded to during the webinar, or we can write a written response to that question, and it organizes the questions by question so that we have clarity that we've addressed your concern. We're finding it a little bit difficult to answer all of the questions that are being submitted through chat. So if you could just help us and submit your questions through the Q&A button, we would greatly appreciate it and make sure that we get those questions answered for you. Thank you.
And just to follow up on that, we did have a question from Andrea Williams around specific examples around how we are going to address the some of the financial audit items, financial aids and so on. And I believe that in her discussion, Dr. Fulks did mention some of the answers to those questions, but as we move through, you'll see even more responses to those types of inquiries.
And if I may, Chief Roberts, I think another part that we'll be sharing at the end of the presentation is the way that the discussion after this presentation is going to go deep into college governance spaces. So I think there might be some questions that come up from particular college communities, and know that this isn't the only time to have those questions answered, which is why cataloging them in the Q&A allows us to ensure, especially college presidents working with our ALOs, that we're taking the questions and information back through the governance process. I want to thank Andrea for a question, because I think it's just an example of how we might want to go into a little bit more detail as we hit college levels. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Fulks.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. I'm so excited that we've got 114 participants in this, because what you're needing to do at this point is get this information out to a core and have it ripple out to the entire district so that everyone can get on board and can help and can understand what's going on. So I know one of the questions was specifically about financial aid, and financial aid actually had several audit findings. And in fact, one of the specific requirements directed at financial aid, I think was put there because of the number of audit findings that overlap in financial aid. So I have met with financial aid a couple times and just listened in to all that they do. And for any of you that haven't, and I know as a faculty member, we often don't even know what each other does, more or less, people that are helping our students get the money they need to go to the school. But boy, are they ever regulated by a lot of federal rules and timing on when things have to be reported and when money has to be accounted for. So as a result of all of those regulations and the fact that they've rolled out almost like a tidal wave from the federal government and the state government with new kinds of financial aid being available, a lot of the fixes that were made in your financial aid business practices were just Band-Aids. And so you needed a report so that you could tell some portion of Pell Grant that this person's Pell or their check wasn't actually cashed. So people would do a great favor for the school and figure out a little Band-Aid that would get a report out. But those reports didn't always work for every school. They definitely didn't work in PeopleSoft. And so those internal controls are where the vast majority of the issues with financial aid and the audits of financial aid have occurred. They were done because people wanted to serve you, but they were not done with an overall view of what you need in a platform to take care of 4 colleges and tens of thousands of students responding to many, many regulations. So I want you to know that your financial aid group, they're on it. I mean, they are meeting every week and they're talking about what they see in PeopleSoft and what screens have the right information about the students and what don't. And they're also meeting students at the desk as they come to the college or online, asking about the money that they need so that they can continue their education. And of course, you know that the SCIF has a special bonus for all of the financial aid students that go to your institutions. So this is a very key area, and you have moved and reorganized so that the colleges have people in charge of financial aid actually at the college on the ground now. I know that many of you are wondering like why it took so long and one college doesn't have a director of financial aid yet, but remember that you're doing all these corrections in the midst of COVID, and getting applications, and especially qualified applications, is a hard thing to do at any time, but in COVID, it's been especially hard. I just want to guarantee you from looking at HR that they keep pushing out to try and get the people that they know will be the right people to do these tasks. And I love listening to the financial aid people talk about how they're cross-checking each other. So when we do the functionality map and requirement 10, this is going to become even clearer, and it will be the documented portion of human controls. That sounds a little bit Orwellian, but the human controls where you do one job and then it's checked by someone else. You don't check your own work. So a lot of headway has been made. The policy and procedure manual for FA was updated. You've got a lot of things being documented. I see it going forward with just a lot of positive hard work from some very hardworking people. So I want to pause here for a second and see if there's any questions I should answer, Royal, or anything we need to add.
I don't see any related to financial aid, Dr. Fulks. I think that you provided the scope. One just kind of closing comment on this is the status or the work of trying to staff financial aid offices across the state is actually not unique to the Peralta Community College District. Certainly it exists in the Bay 10 right now. And I think your comment about hiring colleagues during this time just adds a different layer of a variable, a challenge when it comes to individuals' capacity for relocation and such. So I think that we are set with this particular slide, Dr. Fulks. Thank you.
Thank you. So if we go to the next slide, the several of the requirements 4, 5, 6, 7, and 9 were directly addressed at the Board of Trustees. And I did see a little chat comment go by about working with the board. And I know I have dug deeply into many of these requirements and what kind of evidence is needed to prove that the board is changing. And I've spoken with people that have said, you know, wow, the difference in the board meetings is really significant. You can just watch the videos. We are able to unanimously pass so many things. We got returned to college with all of the complexities of that together, and the college is opened and moving. And many of you may not know, you may know, but you've got a consultant, Dr. Helen Benjamin, who's been in the California Community College system for a long time. And she's been working and training the Board of Trustees, helping them with goals, helping them to self-evaluate how close they are to the ACCJC standards, helping them to discuss those really gnarly areas that are difficult to discuss in a family or with friends, and now you're on a board. And I actually call her St. Helen because the work that she's done is very incredible. I've seen a lot of changes occur. And I know that many of you are living in a world where you have a grand jury report sitting out there. I shared with the Chancellor's Cabinet that I cried when I read it, to just think about how difficult it was for all of you to just keep moving forward with the dysfunctions in governance that were occurring. But what I want to do is say that I think those dysfunctions are getting fixed. And you're going to see the next requirement that I'm going to talk about is probably the basis of how some of those things get fixed. Plus, I've had the privilege of working with one of the trustees, Trustee Delphin, and she is amazing. And so I think that you have a good future ahead, but as always, it takes a lot of training, a lot of goal setting, and then meeting those goals. So I'm going to stop there.
Don't see any questions related to this slide at this point, Dr. Fulks. I think you're good to continue.
Great, thank you. So now we're going to go to another requirement that really does entail the board. So next slide, please, Mai. And this is an awful lot of work that has been done. And I'm going to apologize right up front that I'm going to read these bullets to you because I do think they're significant. And the Chancellor and the Vice Chancellor and your board clerk and Joseph Polanski, who is your Chancellor designee or facilitator for your policies, they have all worked really hard. So let me tell you what's happened over the summer. Actually, let me start with the history. A year ago, when Chancellor Stanback Stroud was here, she actually had a few legal interns come in and review your board policy to see that all of the requirements and ed code and all of those things were up to date, and just make little notes on different board policy and administrative procedures. So with the help of Joseph, we created an interactive matrix of every BP and AP, and it is now posted on your Board of Trustees website so that you could download it and look at it. And I'm just gonna say a little observation. It seems to me when things move forward, people don't necessarily go back and check the BPs and APs. It doesn't mean that you can't put something forward if the BP and AP don't cover it the way that you want it or it should be. But it does mean that if things aren't going through procedures and process the way it should, maybe you need to go back and update the BP and the APs. So Joseph did a terrific review of all of the BP and AP using the CCLC website that updates districts throughout the state, and analyzed them for what ones were legally required, which is the third column over on that spreadsheet that's kind of small, but it's there. Whether they were legally advised, fourth column over, just good practice, fifth column over, or required by accreditation. And in the first column, you can now search your board policies by a word according to the title. So this downloadable Excel matrix is really helpful. But I think the thing that was amazing to all of us, if you look at the second column over, when it was last reviewed, the ACCJC requires that you review on a regular basis your BPs and APs. And over 120 of them, that's 50%, had not been looked at for well over 7 years, and some of them for over a decade. And what I found was actually areas that you were called out for in FICMAT and Cambridge West and ACCJC, so many of them tracked back to BPs that you had not looked at for over a decade. And possibly reviewing it, even if you kept it, would have trained the board and trained all of the people carrying out the policies as far as what the current practices are. I heard one person that I talked with said that sometimes it was so hard to get things done that you had to go outside of policy because everything was so dysfunctional, but then you got something done, but then you added to the dysfunction. So the BPAP task force has combined all of this information now and will be looking every 7 years at every board policy, and has caused some of those board policies to raise to a higher priority based upon your chancellor's priority list. And the very furthest column over there on the left is the priority column, so that you can deal with these. And don't be surprised in September, as you see this report going through the board, you are also going to see a lot of BPs and APs that are being brought up so that we can look at them and see if they represent what you do now, and also just find out if they need to be updated. So how are they updated? If you look at the next slide, please. And I see there's a question about how do you update those more rapidly? Well, I do have to say that you had a couple of strange handoffs with your BPs that had 30-day windows in them that are just going to slow down a lot of work. So you all need to look at that. That's not for anybody to decide, but here is the flow chart of the way the work will go. 3 ways that a BP can be submitted. It can come from any group or individual with expertise in your Peralta district. And it would go to a VC who would also have area expertise and say, oh, you know, we do already have a BP on this, or, you know, we don't have a BP on this. We need one, or we need to update the one that we've got. So that will come in, and after there's a little bit of talking back and forth, that will go to the chancellor designee. A second way that things will come in is through the CCLC biannual systemic policy update. And there's one coming through right now that is going to update many of your BPs and APs with regards to the latest new codes that have come out in Ed Code and new legal issues. So Joseph has been hot on those, looking at them and bringing them up with the BPAP task force, and those will go forward in the September meeting to the board. And then this 7-year cycle, we've put them on this cycle. The Chancellor's Cabinet will have leads assigned by the topic of those board policies. For instance, the VCs and presidents and VPs of instruction are going to be looking at Chapter 4, which is all about instruction. So when those come up, they might have 2 choices. One is, you know, this looks good. We don't think it needs to change. Or this needs to update. This isn't the way we do things anymore. Both of those will go through to Joseph, your facilitator, because I got the feeling that you had looked at some of the BPs, but you didn't have a mechanism to just date, looked at it, okay. So it looked like you hadn't looked at it for over a decade when possibly you had, but now that won't be lost in this whole process. All of those things will be forwarded with all of the important documents that explain why a BP exists. And that will go to the Chancellor's Cabinet and the leads. They'll review it, send it to your PGC, who is going to be responsible to getting it to all the consultative groups. And you'll have to decide those turnaround times. I saw a chat thing that said some of the turnaround times were 60 days. You guys, that hurts you. If you have a policy in this environment that needs changed, you cannot have it sitting out there for that long. Get the group together, do the work, move it forward. It'll go back to the chancellor's cabinet. If it's an AP, the chancellor approves it, and then she informs the board. If it's a BP, the board usually has 2 readings on it. They might have one if there's some emergency issue like COVID where they have to pass it immediately, but typically they'll have 2, and you'll see those 2 readings coming through in September on so many things. So I'd like to go to the next slide and then I'll stop, and if there's some questions we can talk. Actually, let's go ahead and, are there any questions on the BPAP? I'm sorry, I moved a little too fast.
I believe there was a question by the District Academic Senate President, Donald Moore. And he asked a question about the process in an AP, and Donald, and for everyone. That is one of the items that will be going to the board in September, is to approve the work and the recommendation from the BPAP task force, which you're seeing.
Chancellor, your mic was muted once you said BPAP task.
Okay, I'm sorry, for those of you that don't know, I'm in Texas, and Hurricane Ida, the outer bands are starting to hit Texas. And so you may hear my dogs whining because there's thunder and there's lightning. So I muted it so you wouldn't hear them, and then I forgot to unmute. But the item that you see before you right now, the flow chart, is part of the AP. And so we've already developed the AP. That will be something that we will be vetting as we go forward, because remember, the AP doesn't go through the board. But we are sending the board policy, which Janet just covered, to the board in their September meeting. And that is one that we would like to get done because it outlines the processes of how we're going to review them. And we don't have a policy on how we're going to review them. The other item that you saw was a flow chart. That item is already out there. That does not need any approval, because all it is indicating what's out there, what's been reviewed. And so that is available right now. So hopefully that answers the questions regarding this particular one. Once it's in an AP, and once the board approves it, we go back through the process. If it wants to get changed, we go back through this process again. We go through the review cycle, and we changed it from about 5 years to 7 years because ACCJC changed their policy. So once you're fully accredited, it is a 7-year cycle. So we align this with the ACCJC report that says that you have a process. It doesn't say how often you do it, but we did not have a process.
Dr. Jackson, a question came in through the Q&A. Would you mind restating who composes or comprises the AP-BP task force, please?
The membership of the task force, and remember, task force is not a committee. It's not a long-term standing committee. We have a board representative, Trustee Deanna Delphine Polk, is representing the board on that. We have a faculty member that I call him JB, but Dr. Joseph Belinsky is on there. We have the chief of staff who is on that committee. And we have Dr. Siri Brown, who looks at both sides of the house, instruction as well as student services. And then we have the board clerk, because she is the one that will be maintaining and updating this and setting up these ongoing review cycles on behalf of the board. So that is the task force right now.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Dr. Fulks, I'm not seeing any other questions related to BP and AP, so I think you're cleared to move to the next item.
Thank you. So just to loop back around, if your main problems are internal and human controls, The thing that documents those so that there's a problem and you know who to go to and where to go are your board policies and your administrative procedures and your practices on the campus. So those things are the core. Without them, how do you know if you're functioning according to the way that you've agreed that you should function? So that takes us to this last requirement, requirement 10, and perhaps you saw it in your ICER in the old days. We all had to do this functional map, and it started off with one district doing it and mapping out using the standards in ACCJC, what the college does and what the district does. And honestly, how useless is that? Because if you want to know who's in charge of something with regards to purchasing or warehousing, you don't know what standard it's under. You know that it's under the function of business services and purchasing. So when we fixed the requirement, we've met this requirement now completely. But when we talked to ACCJC, they suggested that we reorganize it based on functions. So if you go to the next slide, please. So this is an example. This is the big work. And if everybody starts sweating like I do when I look at a huge document like this, where you're talking about district roles and college roles, and everyone needs to have their input so that you're on the right page, don't start sweating. We have given you an extended calendar, and we have told the ACCJC in the follow-up report that we have a draft and that it will be moving through slowly, because this, above everything, needs to go through governance, needs to go through the crew that's doing the work on the ground, needs to be reviewed. And eventually, when you have this, you'll know if there's an issue. Was it something that should have been looked at the college, or did the buck stop at the district? Who does what, when, and where? And so this is posted, and it's totally draft. Please think draft, draft, draft in every iteration that you see of this. We did a brain dump initially to try and get things out there. We stole some stuff from other colleges that had done a good job. Nothing here is in cement yet. So just keep looking at this, and you'll notice that on the right side of the document, we've put the BPs and the APs that are there, because if you've got a policy or a procedure and we don't know who's doing it or what department is in charge of it, then that BP or AP is not very useful. So we are going to ask you to get down and dirty on this, and we've been meeting in small groups. We're going to keep meeting through September, and then we'll get a follow-up draft out to you later, sometime in October, and then we'll have to get it done towards the middle of October so that it can have 2 readings as well at the Board of Trustees meetings. So that's the big work that we have going forward. This is where the college needs to work hard. The other requirements were so directed at district operations that you don't really have to see your own personality in the follow-up reports as much as you do in this requirement 10. And if you go to the next slide, I just want to show you, I think there's a few names left off because we did this last week, but this summer work has been involved with a lot of people. I know faculty were in the summer, we're doing other things, but we have included people, and now's the time for faculty and classified and everyone to get involved in the work. You can see that we had many meetings. I'll just tell you, I have over 250 hours of work and meetings on all of this with people. And so next slide. We will, this is the visual, your chancellor and myself, we're very visual people. We like to see it look pretty. So what we have here is a mapping of the timeline. And for the follow-up report, in order to get 2 readings in the Board of Trustees, we are only going to be able to send that out to you quickly. And then I have to turn it around in 2 days and get it to the board. And then the board has to do 2 readings and we get it to ACCJC on October 1st. So as the chancellor started this meeting, this is insane timeline wise. I looked online and I asked ACCJC for examples of follow-up reports. And there are a few. All the ones I saw had 6 months and 1 requirement to follow up on. We have 10. Plus, we have to do a teach out plan for each college, which the ALOs and the VPs have been working hard on. These teach out plans, they're a little bit frightening if you think about what they're for. They are for direction to students. If the college is closed, where is the nearest program that they could go to? And this is the first time, it's a federal regulation. This is the first time that anyone in the ACCJC has been required to report it out. So you all, you're the example of what a teach out plan would look like. You're only on probation, so they're pretty general right now, and they will be available for you to review. If you were to go on show cause, it becomes very work labor heavy. It's nearly a student ed plan for every student in every program to another location. So this is serious, but I think what I want you to know is that you are working on it and you have gotten, I would, if I was on a visiting team, I would say this district is moving and we want to keep talking to them, but they're moving. So I think one of the key factors of evidence that's going to be important is this functional map, which will be very iterative. It's here, you can see that it's going to go out to the colleges, back to the district, out to the colleges, back to the district, to the Board of Trustees. And then finally around November, it will be in its final form because this had to be cleared before December by ACCJC. So hopefully that will give us all plenty of time to get involved. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Garcia.
Thank you. I want to note that Dr. Jackson, I think, has some comments on the most recent 3 slides. So Dr. Jackson.
Thank you very much. I have heard repeatedly that, and it may be true, like I tell people, perception is reality. We weren't involved. We didn't know. Nobody consulted us. That is part of the reason why we are recording this. So if you know individuals that are not here, please, please, please refer them to this document. Not only is it something that they can reference, but they can also, we as a district can show that we provided this information to the widest possible, given the short time that they gave us. You heard Janet say, usually colleges or districts are given 6 months. And I started out by saying we were given a little over 90 days. So please, please, please share this. The way that you can get involved, you, as the finger pointing you, I guess I should point up to my camera, is getting involved when it comes to the campus as part of the functional map. When I see people say, well, we need staffing here, or my program hasn't been addressed there, the way you get involved is to get involved in the process. Get involved in the educational master planning process, get involved in defining what the roles are for the campuses and the district. And once we agree on that, then we can start looking at what does it take in terms of human resources, in terms of equipment, in terms of training, and in terms of facilities. So please, I can't urge you enough, let's work on this together. It serves no good to stand on the sideline and to point fingers if you're not going to get in and be part of the solution. So I just wanted to underscore what Janet was saying. We have done yeoman's work. I showed you, at the opening day, all the different reports. But it doesn't help if we have reports and we don't follow up on them and we don't address the recommendations and incorporate them. So that is what we're trying to do now. That is our task for the next year, because we want to shake that shank that's around us, that shackle of you are not fully accredited. We want to get rid of that. We no longer want to be, oh yeah, you work at Peralta, aren't you guys on warning? I am so sick of hearing that. And I've only been here less than what, from April the 16th to now. So I know if I'm a little tired of it, I'm sure you guys are too. So let's do something about it. Let's do it together and not just look at the past and say, well, you didn't do this or they didn't do that. We really need to move forward, and we need to do that together, because I am because you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. On that particular note about accessing this recording, as we transition to the next slide, I just want to say that on behalf of President Besikoff, President Johnson, President Jones, and myself, the presidents are committed to sending out not only this presentation, but also the link to this recording, to ensure that, especially for our colleagues who may not be able to join some of our campus-specific college governance groups, we really want to underscore the importance for engagement, involvement, and provide a space for providing questions and recommendations. So as we come to the close of this particular webinar, here is a snapshot. And what I'll say is this really is the tip of the iceberg snapshot, because Dr. Fulks has us in very detailed lines. So at the college level, you're going to see what it looks like as we're now having this conversation within spaces of academic senate, classified senate, college governance councils. Berkeley City College is going to conclude this webinar. We'll have a 20-minute break, and we're going to jump right into college roundtable and get this process going. So as you can see, as we head into the September months, we are now going to see at our respective college governance councils and spaces, the draft. Want to note here that it is a very rough draft at this point in time. It was hot off the press late Friday evening, and we are working to finalize those. You'll see as you read the dates, we're going to have 4 identical reports. This is predominantly a district response. So for those of you that were involved in the development of the 2020 November 1 reports, it's going to feel different, because that report was very much telling the college story, addressing ACCJC's recommendations in the January 2020 letter. This one's going to be the exact opposite. It's going to be specifically the district. And so they will look like identical reports. We'll make it through our respective college governance processes. We're going to have identical signature pages. It's going to go through the ways in which we conduct consultative business in our district. Make it to the Board of Trustees. And I want to note here, Dr. Jackson, because I believe at the top of the webinar, you said September 27th. We have noted on this slide, September 28th. Can we just get the date confirmation, please?
I believe it is the 28th.
Great.
And I see Chief of Staff.
That is the next board meeting. Yes, the September 28th is the board meeting date.
So my mistake.
Not a problem. So you'll see that at September 14th, the board will see the draft, the rough draft, and by the 28th, they will get the final report that has gone through college endorsement. It will be submitted on October 1st, and then similar to last fall, we will host a visit, a virtual visit, October 20th and 21st. And for those of you who may have been involved in that last year, here is where continuity will really serve us well, because the same team members that we had in December of 2020 will be on this October follow-up. So it certainly helps for us to not feel like we have to continuously tell the story over and over and over again. We've got colleagues who have been walking this journey with us this past year. We have come. Oh, yes.
Dr. Garcia.
Yes, Dr.
I'm
Falk.
wondering if can you just enlarge this last slide, and just, as we get to the end of what was possibly a very boring rendition of everything that's going on, I want anybody that's online to look at the faces of these students and to recognize the diversity that's there, and to remind yourselves, that's okay if you can't enlarge. There we go, yay. To remind yourselves of all of the life stories that are behind each face in that picture. These students they're relying on you. They're relying on the institution to get the act together of all of these different levels. And you have been doing it. You deserve a huge round of applause. You are the phoenix coming out of, all of that difficult time, and you have a great opportunity to remake your district the way that you want it to. So I just want us to end today not thinking about all the numbers and the PowerPoint, but thinking about those faces and the reason why you do this work that you're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Fulks, for that reminder. I do want to take a moment to answer a question that came through in the Q&A in terms of what is the next decision point in terms of the ACCJC, our college's accreditation standing. So once the October visit is made, teams are usually given 30 days to provide an update of the findings of their visit. If I'm not mistaken at this point in time, and I may ask for Dr. Jackson if I'm misspeaking here, but then the report will then be heard at the January commissioners meeting. And then the commissioners at their January meeting again have another 30 days to offer a response. So similar to what we experienced this past year, we will likely receive communication in the month of February that provides us with kind of what are the next steps. Have I captured that appropriately, Dr. Jackson?
Yes, I would say that the 30 days, the first 30 days are when they submit something to us for statements of fact. So if there was something that they observed, but it really was either the wrong individuals were identified or the information that was presented was not captured accurately, and then we respond back to that. And then everything else you said, Dr. Garcia, is absolutely correct.
Perfect, thank you. As we reach our final slide presentation, which is a thank you acknowledgement, I want to take a moment of personal privilege on behalf of the executive leadership teams at the respective colleges to thank our two colleagues, Maisha and Sasha. The amount of work that they do behind the scenes to support us in being clear and articulate, and as you can see, literally run the show, is not lost on each and every one of us. So to Mai and Sasha, thank you so much for all of your work and support of us. I also want to thank our Chancellor, the leadership of Dr. Jackson, our colleagues at the district office. This has been a heavy lift in which the district has had to take charge and lead, and every step along the way have consulted and engaged with the colleges. And on behalf of the presidents, really thank our executive teams, the vice presidents, the ALOs, the deans, directors. When Dr. Jackson opened and said, the faces that you see here are but the tip of the iceberg, it's so true. And so as we conclude this webinar, again, committing that once the recording is made available, you are going to be inundated with invitations to view it. Mark Johnson will likely send something. The college presidents will send something. And so begins the consultation process at our college level. For BCC colleagues, we have our roundtable where we will be discussing this on the first part beginning at 12:20 today. And you can follow the timeline for Laney College, Merritt College, and College of Alameda. Thank you so much for viewing the webinar, and we look forward to you engaging. Send us questions, let us know your thoughts. Dr. Fulks, final thank you, thank you, thank you. We're in the middle of it, it's not done. So this is one of those moments as a teaching moment where you affirm the good work that's been done so we can roll up our sleeves and keep grinding. So thank you so much for your guidance in this process. And with that, we'd like to thank our Peralta colleagues for joining us on this accreditation update.
Thank you, everyone. We couldn't do it without you.